Sometimes you finish this coaching session and you genuinely don't know if anything happened. You're uncertain if the results they're getting are off the charts or if there's no results happening. Inside of today's episode, we are looking at and exploring the 6 signs for you as a coach to be able to know if transformation is happening inside of your coaching container. And make sure you listen to the end because number 6 is a major game changer for your coaching skill set. Welcome to another episode of the Best Damn Coach podcast. It's Amanda here. I'm so pumped that you are diving into this week's episode with me. Today, we're actually focusing more on what's happening in the client session. So, today is really thinking about your skill set, the art of coaching that's happening right underneath your nose on a consistent basis. This was prompted because one of the things we've been working on in the BDC is just being self-aware of renewals and how renewals are generated, and understanding that if we don't have conversations around renewals, clients don't know that they can take a step further with us. And also, at the heart of the yes that's going to come from your renewals is results. Are they getting the results that they want and that they came to you for? And sometimes it can be super obvious and sometimes it can be less obvious. So today, what we're really looking at is the real signs that transformation is actually happening inside of your coaching container. I honestly was a little hesitant to record this episode because I also want to be transparent that I'm going to share some things here for you to look at, but there's also lots of other things that you could be seeing. And one of the greatest learnings for me around results is that I can't be so tight and locked into like the one thing that I think that they should be happening or that I think they should be getting. I also have to open my heart and open my mind and open my data collection skills to see what other shifts may be happening. I'm going to share a story from a client that I had years ago when I was doing health and life coaching. It was one of the biggest learnings of my life as a coach in my career, I should say. And so I brought on this brilliant woman to my coaching roster. She was a C-suite exec. She held a very, high level position in a corporate gig. And she had said, originally our goal set was she'd been struggling with years of kind of body confidence and not really knowing how to fuel her body. She'd been a yo-yo dieter. She just wanted a steady Eddie approach to feeling really good and confident in her body. And she wanted to understand nutrition. She wanted to not just like give in to the gimmicks. She was there for the long haul. And so our goal was steady body composition change. So when I emphasize that body composition change is very different than just weight loss. Weight loss is focusing on one scale metric. And when I coached in the health and fitness space, what we work is to rewire that idea and to understand that the scale is a little bit deceptive around these things. Anyways, I'm not going to go into all the health and nutrition work. At first, our sessions were great. There was high energy. We had very meaningful conversation. She was getting results. She was pumped and excited. And then we showed up to a session after that same energy consistently. And she said something to me that changed me so much. She said, "This was the best money I've ever spent to know that I don't want this goal. That actually, Amanda, this goal is not important to me." She said, "The things that this goal is going to require me to do don't like the effort is not worth the return. And I actually don't care about this goal." She's like, "And I needed to pay you this money and to work with you to realize I've been chasing this thing for so long that's not important. It's other people may think it's important. Society feels it's important, but I don't actually care about it." And so I want to share that because part of understanding if transformation is happening is looking for the signs that I want to share today and also being open to the discussion and the dialogue, which is why we as coaches should be the most amazing listeners. And we should have a process and a framework that we step into every session that gives us the ability to meet our client in real time. If I would have gone in with agenda, not let her speak, just bombarded the conversation, been so steadfast on where I was taking her, I would have missed that opportunity for amazing transformation. So I think that a lot of coaches feel, but they don't always say out loud, that sometimes you finish a session and you genuinely don't know if anything actually happened. Sometimes you're like, this was freaking awesome. The client might have been engaged, the conversation felt meaningful, but you can't quite put your finger on whether something actually shifted or whether it was just good chit chat back and forth. And so, because transformation inside every coaching container looks a little different, I would say the transformation isn't always loud and big. In fact, I think sometimes the quiet ones are sometimes the most significant, and we want to look for those and support our clients in order to do that. So, if this is your first time joining the show, I'm so excited you're here. We're diving into coaching mastery. At the heart of what we do as coaches is study our work, become better practitioners, because that just pays dividends to the impact that we make, the renewals, the revenue. It all is amazing. But we also have to have conversations here 100% about the skill of growing a business. Because if you don't know how to get clients, then of course that is a struggle to even coach. So, by the way, I do have a limited series podcast that's exclusively focused on how to get clients. It's called How to Get Clients. I'll drop a link inside the show notes, but you can go into any podcast platform and search How to Get Clients. It's 21 bingeable episodes, less than 12 minutes each, that literally walks you through a step by step process on how to bring consistent clients into your coaching practice. But today we're laying the groundwork for being a better coach inside every container. And it doesn't matter if you're listening to this and you have lots of certifications or zero certifications. I want to help you identify the observable, real, tangible signs that tell you something is genuinely shifting inside of your inside of your own coaching container. And I think it's going to change how you pay attention inside of your own coaching episodes, just to be really transparent. And I want that to be the case for you, because in order to be great at what you do, you have to be an observer. You have to be an observer of the language they're using, the tone, the body language, the silence, the cadence. All of these things are really important. So, before we get into what the signs actually are, I do want to talk about why I think coaches miss them, and honestly looking for the wrong thing or looking in the wrong direction. We've been conditioned by probably our trainings, our certifications, probably some social media, maybe the highlight reel of the coaching container, because we're all sharing our wins for this giant, big breakthrough moment. The tears. I remember when I was NLP training, it was a standing joke. Like, you're not getting results unless you don't leave here with like soggy face and red eyes. And I thought, man, that's so inaccurate. And so, if that's all you're watching for, you're going to miss out on what's actually happening in front of you. So, I don't want you to get stuck on this idea that like the big outward pouring of emotion is a sign of breakthrough, because it's not that. I believe real transformation is often quiet, shows up in tiny shifts, shifts in their language, but in a different quality of the silence they use and the way they talk back to you versus like, or what they bring to a session for you, with you, how they talk about themselves compared to 3 months ago. These are all signs. And I think it requires you as a coach to pay careful attention, not just to what the client is saying or your accountability form that you're sending, but like the whole freaking story. So I'm going to go over today 5 signs, or rather 6 signs. 2 of them are kind of similar but different, to look for in your sessions that really show you transformation is happening. Okay, so sign number 1. Honestly, these are in no particular order, by the way, too. They're just things that I have noticed over the years in watching clients, but also in feeling myself and watching my own transformation, that I feel like some of my practitioners missed. But also my transformation is also my responsibility, right? Okay. So, if you think about, every client comes into your world with some sort of story, some sort of reason that they showed up to do this work. It's usually about why they're stuck, because if we're honest, that language, "I'm feeling stuck," is probably at the core of all of our client work. No matter if I'm helping coaches grow their business, or if you're helping them with weight loss or overcome grief or stop yelling at their parents, they are parents who want to stop yelling at their children. They are stuck because they've hit a wall as to why their current behaviors and things are not working, and what's getting in their way of getting over that hump that they want to be at. And in the early weeks of a coaching relationship, these tend to, what I would say, to be very static. They're very attached to them. It's like, if you imagine a story, they're just reading the book of the story over and over and over and over and over the same way. And what it signifies for me is, this is kind of like the neural highways, the pathways that they've been talking about forever. They are just very tight. They're just like keep going over that same story. And they've been running it so long that it feels like a fact to them. What I've noticed to be one of the coolest and clearest signs of transformation is when that story starts to loosen up. It starts to shift ever so slightly in the beginning. Not because the client, like, not because any of their past changed, to be honest, but because they actually start telling it differently because something inside of them is shooken up and there's some sort of nuance there that didn't exist before. So maybe they start to take more ownership for their story. They stop blaming, or they stop saying, like, it was just a circumstance. It was because I was here and that thing happened and I couldn't get away. Maybe, honestly, one of the funniest parts is when they start to reference their old self and they like laugh about it. You're like, can you believe that? Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Right? Or they catch themselves in the middle of the story or attached to like that old version of themselves and actually go, wow, I can totally see that's just like not even true. Right? That last piece is really where the gold is because then it indicates to you that there has been such an identity shift and the work you're doing is effective when they can look at that old thing that they used to be so attached to and be like, "Dude, I was living in that story and it's not even true." Like you should benchmark that, highlight that in your session notes and be able to identify like, wow, look how far you've come. A great example that I see in coaches when they come to me is this is just a tangible example, not necessarily the greatest example, but I think this might be relevant for you, is they're afraid to talk about what they do. They're not showing up consistently. They're not putting their face out there. And when they start to talk about it, they're almost like, can you believe that at one time I couldn't even say I was ex coach? I look at that my own story because I like to look back and go, can you believe the first year of running a business, my Instagram was only food pictures? That is so freaking hilarious, right? Because now I can see that I was so attached then to what people were going to think of me. And I felt like such an imposter that I felt like hiding behind food somehow changed things. Funny, but also a really important part of knowing there's transformation happening. Okay, sign number 2. This one is subtle, and maybe I should put this at the end, but I was just kind of pulling them in because I think it is a nuance and a higher level of awareness as a coach that maybe you notice and maybe you don't yet, but I want to put it in here because now you can't undo what you hear today on the show. I don't know if you've ever felt it, but one of the things you probably want to do as a coach is when there's silence on the call, you want to rush in to fill it because it feels freaking awkward. Like, do I say something? What are they thinking? Oh my gosh, are they angry? Are they sad? Are they mad? What are they thinking? It's like there's this uncomfortable silence. But what I want to say is over time, what you'll start to see is this silence shifts. Honestly, there's different kinds of silence in a coaching session, in my opinion, and they mean different things. So there's this uncomfortable silence where the client kind of goes quiet and they don't know what to say because maybe the question made them question themselves or even they're defensive. So they're like searching, searching, searching. That has like kind of like a tension in it, like, ooh, I don't know. And then there's this other kind of silence that happens when a question kind of lands somewhere deep in their soul. They go inward, like really searching for it. And that silence for me is like of a higher quality. It's slower. The client welcomes it. They're kind of processing and they look back at you and give some sort of feedback, not to avoid, but to like dive into it, right? And something honestly will come out of their mouth like, whoa, I didn't expect that to come up. So I just wanted to say this. I think silence can be different in sessions and look for it. As the trust builds within your session, but more as they're having greater transformation, silence is almost confidence because they're processing, they're seeing it, they're so self aware of what's actually happening internally for them, how they're thinking and changing about their response. And it's a great indicator for me that something's like genuinely opening up for them. Sign number 3. Oh my gosh. We should better be looking for this one, in my opinion. In the early weeks of coaching, they're getting to know you, like there's trust building. They're also getting the cadence of what coaching sessions are going to look and feel like with you. And I hope that you have some sort of structure to that. Again, I do have a blueprint for that. You should definitely grab it. If you haven't, I'll put it in the notes, but you can head on over to amanda-walker.com/blueprint. But my sessions are all held the same. So a client knows, doesn't mean the coaching the same. It means the structure of the session is the same. So what it does is it It's kind of like a child who's afraid to walk into a room not knowing what to expect. Like, you don't wanna go to a surprise party every time you're on a coaching session. You wanna walk in and know that this space feels comfortable and it feels safe, and there's routineness there so that you can get to the core of what's happening. And so, as that relationship deepens, what should be happening is the surface level problems that they were bringing in the beginning should start to shift. If you're 6 months in, or still talking about the same ish, there for me, that is a red flag for you as a practitioner. We shouldn't be there. We should be talking about new things. We should be watching the problem shift in real time. So as the coaching container evolves, they should be bringing different problems. The things that they're feeling more safe to express, maybe the fears or the patterns they've started to notice in themselves as you've kind of peeling back these onion layers, the stuff that's really they're noticing because they're probably getting some momentum. And so as there's momentum and they hit a wall, they're gonna be noticing it and like, "Oh, but this thing is actually a problem." Like, I didn't notice that I'm yelling at my kid most consistently when I have this happen at work, or when my partner, my husband's at work and working a night shift or whatever. It's basically like they're trusting you more and they're trusting themselves more. So you actually get to the good stuff, like the root cause work, and they begin to bring different problems. Because I think a client who is genuinely changing and evolving is naturally bringing you a changing set of concerns. There should be kind of a positive correlation there, and that is a great sign that transformation is happening. Sign number 4. Honestly, this is so brilliant. They start freaking just coaching themselves, because this will catch me off guard. And sometimes I've been in a coaching session, and at the top of my sessions, I'm always asking them to kind of drain their brain and empty their bucket. And I will even start to hear them. And I know you're going to say this, and I know you're going to say this, and I notice this. And I'm like, sweet. I will literally say sometimes, good. Okay, we're done. You don't need me. And so I love seeing this happen in real time. They genuinely already know. They've been sitting with this, they've been asking themselves harder questions, they're starting to see it in real time. And what I believe to do is this is like the greatest level of autonomy that we're searching for, and we're equipping them. The goal for all of us is for them to go out and spread their wings and fly ultimately. And they may still be with you for years as a coach. You have clients that I've had for 4 or 5 years, but we're not still working on the same goals that we started with. It's new goals. They have been effective at coaching themselves. They're taking that self-awareness, now applying it to a different skill set and a new set of desires that they have at a next level version of themselves. But I think this is a profound sign of transformation because it tells you something critical is happening. The client is internalizing the coaching. They're not waiting for the session to do their thinking. They're not being codependent on you. They're not doing they're doing it's indicative that they're not doing any work outside the session. It shows they're putting in the time. They're developing, honestly, a coaching relationship with themselves, which is the greatest sign of mastery. The reason I feel so confident in sessions is because guess what? Everything I teach, I coach myself on, and I started to do that years ago. And the capacity for them to do this once they start to get it and it develops doesn't go away, right? When the formal coaching relationship ends. And that is so freaking cool, right? That's the primary impact of you coaching them. But guess what? That trickles down the secondary impact of how they show up for their clients, and then how those clients show up for their people. So this is the really cool thing about transformation. Sign number 5, you may not love this, and also it's so great to watch for. And I want to talk about this one carefully because I think it's the most misread sign of all. Because sometimes you get a little bit like, what? But I don't personally believe that this is a problem. And this sign is that the client actually starts to push back on you a little bit. So you suggest something or they've tried something and they will actually say, yeah, like, I don't think that's it. Like, I tried that, it's not it. Or I don't agree with you. And some people can interpret this as resistance. And I'm not saying that it isn't resistance. This just matters where it shows up. If this is showing up immediately in the first few sessions, then I would identify it as resistance or a lack of rapport built between you and the client. But honestly, this usually comes later in the work, and it's always usually the opposite. I don't really want a client who just agrees with every single thing that I say in every session, because I don't really think that's transformation. That's just a like performative. That's just them being a really great student. Cool, I'm glad. But ultimately, my clients are going out and they're having to run a filter through all of their content. They're going out there and changing. I can't sit next to them while they're coaching somebody. So they need to be able to apply the things we're learning and do it in their own lives. So a client who pushes back is honestly a client who's developed enough self trust in their own experience to know what works for them and to trust me enough to know that it's a safe space to talk about why that doesn't feel like a good strategy. What I love about this, it means they're no longer outsourcing their discernment to you. And what that could look like is, hey, you told me to hit 150 grams of protein, but I feel really good at 120 and I feel solid at that. Or you told me that after, I had an experience, or let's say like I yelled at my child, you told me to use this tool, but I actually feel like this tool is more effective. Sweet. That's exactly what we want. But none of this would have happened if they hadn't signed up for the coaching relationship and tried the tools to then create the discernment and self trust to know what is best for them. So, what I would encourage you is when they start to have these moments, is to meet them with curiosity. Ask them why. Tell me more, right? Two questions that are just so easy to have inside of your coaching toolbox to get interested in what's really there for them, because inside it's almost something important that they're like stepping into and becoming, and it's super special. And what's funny about this one too is this is also your children. It's like you want them to be critical thinkers, but when they push back and they offer it, it's like, oh, wait, stop, just kidding. But obviously we have to learn, like, they're creating that autonomy and that discernment too. They're filtering, we're preparing them to be adults. It is actually what we want. And sign number 6, which honestly loops back to kind of the first one, slightly different, is you start to listen to the language that they use about themselves. You listen to the qualifiers. I'll give a great example. When I start with clients, usually some things that come up are, I've got this side hustle, this baby business. It's just this little thing. By the end of our work, I hear things like, I'm a CEO, I run a coaching company, I am a boss. Right? That's the language of how they start to talk about themselves. That is so shifting. It's the foundation of the identity shift. When clients work with me, I want them to move away from this hobby coach identity that they have and step into being a profitable CEO coach. That is a very different identity. The way you think about yourself, the routines, the way you view yourself, a lot of things have to change in order for that to be successful. So I'm looking for these qualifiers and watching, and I will point them out and say, did you just hear what you said? You called yourself a CEO. 6 months ago, you weren't doing that. 3 months ago, you weren't doing that. Right? But they stop saying things like, oh, I should start, or I should try, or I'll give it a go. They drop apologies, maybe that they used to do, and they just fully own the space that they're in, even when it's really tiny, small things. But those things stack. And I would add that it's our job to note those down. When we start to see those language shifts, is point them out, celebrate them. Because you and I both know that when we're in like right now, all of us building a business, man, we have to delay gratification. There's a lot of times where it feels like we're not winning the game and we're just running up against roadblock and roadblock. And when we can have somebody come alongside us and show us a different way and guide us to the receipts of what's actually working and the transformation that's happening, because we might be so locked in on just the revenue, but then we're missing all of the other things that have to happen in order for the revenue to climb. And so sign number 6 is watching for that language that really shows they're in this shifting identity. And so we have these 6 signs. I want to just also tag this part on to the end, that what if these signs aren't there, right? I think it's just as important as recognizing transformation when it's happening and knowing when it's not, because there can be clients that you're just going to, none of these signs exist. And again, remember, this is Amanda's list right now of the things that I think you might be missing. There's probably, and I hope for you, a lot more obvious signs, like they're telling you things are going great. Oh my gosh, this happened. Those are beautiful. But when you're seeing the same problems come every week and you're not noticing any verbal, anecdotal data collection that is shifting, then I think the conversation, it should be a direct one with that. Like, it could sound something like, hey, I just want to check in. Like, let's look at your goal set of what you started with and where you are now. And tell me, like, how do you feel about your results? What do you notice has changed? Because what I like to check in on is sometimes I may not see these things. Maybe they're just not remembering to tell me on sessions. They're not noticing them. And so if I make a rules up in my head that their transformation is not happening, then I could be totally misdirected because there's often been times, and I still like to use these questions regardless. Hey, how's it going? What do you think? And then they spew to me like all these amazing things that are happening in their life. And I'm like, ah, okay, there is. Or they might tell you the opposite. But it's a willingness to have that kind of conversation that's so powerful because that's often where the breakthrough is. So what they say, I don't think I'm getting any results. This isn't great. I don't know why I invested this money. Then these are the kind of hard conversations that we have to have. And then you have to go back to the data collection. There's times where I've had these conversations and I've strategically teed them up because I can see that the person isn't doing the work. They haven't done any of the homework. They haven't done any of the tasking, anything I've given. And so then I will have to say, okay, so tell me, your results aren't where they want to be. I assigned a homework XYZ. You haven't done any of the homework assignments or however you want to approach it. Tell me, like, what do you think your results were if we were able to accomplish those? So what I'm trying to show is like it takes works outside the session. This isn't like a magic pill. Come to one session with me and you're fixed. Like, that's not how it works. But coaches who are willing to have this really intricate conversation are going to be the ones who curate such a high level of results for their clients. So I'm so grateful that you're here just with a strong desire to be the best damn coach possible for your people. And it takes constant work. It takes constant practice. It takes reps after reps. And you're just going to keep getting better and better. And I know that by listening to today's episode, I probably pointed you in direction of new things to look for that are just going to validate this amazing work that you're doing. And honestly, how to have the conversation at the end if you feel uncertain of exactly where it's going. Remember, you're only going to get better over time because you have these. So, if this episode spoke to you, do me a favor, giant ask of mine. Will you please just take a moment to go into the reviews and leave me an amazing review inside of Apple or inside of Spotify? And even so, you can click the three little dots on this episode and it'll allow you to copy the link and just maybe send it to a friend, drop it in a group, share it on your stories, or come talk to me over at A Walk My Way on Instagram or over on LinkedIn. I'm hanging out on LinkedIn, y'all. And I'd love to continue the conversation with you. So until next time, go coach 'em up.